Hello, friends. The 1,083 days of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The Ukrainian telegram channel Deep State reported on the advance of the Ukrainian armed forces in the northwest of the Ukrainian bridgehead, in the Kursk region, in the area of Malaya Lochnia, and in the direction of Krugunkoe. Earlier, in January, the Russians advanced here. But the enemy also advanced south of this area, in Nikolsky. Russian telegram channels also write about the advance of their army in the area of the village of Sverdlikovo, in the southwestern part of the Kursk bridgehead. Let me remind you that Deep State wrote on Saturday that the Ukrainian armed forces entered the village of Cherkasskaya Konopolka to the southeast of Sudzha and approached the outskirts of Fanasiivka, which is now in the gray zone on the map. However, today Russian telegram channels wrote that they began to displace the Ukrainian armed forces from the territories captured during the offensive near Sudzha. In particular, they have driven Ukrainian troops out of Fanasiivka and are preparing to storm Cherkasskaya Konopolka, which is being subjected to massive airstrikes. Ukrainian sources have not confirmed this information. In Donbas, the Russians continue to gradually advance towards creating a bag to the west of Kurakovi. They are close to capturing the village of Andriivka. The situation there, according to Ukrainian serviceman Bonyatov, is difficult. Other military personnel have previously written that the village defense is on the verge of collapse. A fighter with the call sign Mochnoi adds that the Russians are occupying the southern outskirts of Andriivka. If the enemy presses Andriivka, this could lead to the operational encirclement of Konstantinopol and Ulakli. The problems in this area are only growing. While we can hold the southern part and repel attacks, but this will not happen for long because there are simply not enough resources here, he writes. He also fears that the fire pocket may slam shut, and then the scenario will repeat itself as in many settlements that can be counted on the fingers. In addition, Mochnoi assumes the imminent loss of Dachny to the west of Kurakovi, where the enemy is bypassing the village from the south and seeping through the sector to the western outskirts. By the way, the Russian Defense Ministry has already announced the capture of this village. As for Toretsk, which the Russians announced the capture of, there are data from there that Russia already controls the headframe of the Toretsk mine, the main fortified area of the Ukrainian armed forces in the city. This follows from videos published by Ukrainian units, how drones shoot down Russian flags that they are trying to raise over the headframe. To the east of Pokrovsk, the Russians reached the crossroads of the Pokrovsk-Kostyantynivka highway, where they began to consolidate. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces to the east recaptured the village of Bodyany Druhi, where the enemy managed to consolidate for a short time. South of Pokrovsk, the Ukrainian army advanced near Dashinsky. Fighter Mochnoi writes that we now control the eastern part of the settlement, and have also begun a battle for the center in order to smoothly move west and fully regain control of Dashinsky. Also earlier, the Ukrainian armed forces carried out a successful counterattack in the settlement of Pishchuni. Apparently, this is an attempt to cut off the formed salient. In recent days, there have been many comments in Ukrainian sources and in Western media that the Russian offensive has slowed down, and in some areas, as we see, Ukrainian troops are counterattacking. Russian military telegram channels write that the Ukrainian army has begun transferring large reserves to the front. In their opinion, the minimum task of these actions is to stop the Russian advance. The maximum task is for the Ukrainian army to go on the offensive. As the Russians assume, this is being done, among other things, to convince Trump that the Ukrainian army can stabilize the front and seize the initiative, and therefore it is not necessary to seek compromises with Putin, but to give Ukraine more weapons, and also to raise morale in society. Ukraine traditionally does not comment on troop movements. But, judging by indirect signs, many combat-ready units are now being sent to the front. And this really helps slow down the Russian offensive. At least near Pokrovsk, where the Russians have not made any significant progress for more than a week, although the enemy continues to advance in other directions. But further developments will depend on whether the Ukrainian armed forces have enough reserves to continue to support the front or, even more so, to go on the offensive, the losses in which are much greater than in defense, and whether the Russian troops have enough reserves to continue to maintain pressure on Ukrainian positions. In general, as before, the reserve mathematics will play a key role. The side that miscalculates and burns its best reserves in attacks to solve local and short-term problems that do not lead to turning points on the front as a whole will find itself in a losing position in the longer term. Friends, I understand that the duration of events is becoming less relevant for you, but for me, the situation is only getting worse. Those who have been with me for a long time know that preparing reports on this channel has become my main job, and I have no other job for obvious reasons. Lately, the channel has had few views, so I ask for your help. If you have the opportunity to support me with a cup of coffee, I will be very grateful. Thank you very much for understanding, and see you in the next video.